Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. My name is Mr. Dogbot333. Welcome back to Hearts of Iron 4, the new order as Mexico. Now, last time we were here together, we went ahead and started checking out this new economy thing. It really is something. It's kind of nutty. How this is going. Look at that. Let me get some productivity going. Which makes me think. Subsidize some mechanation. Well, let's build some mojitos first. Nah, actually, we'll subsidize mechanation. That's gonna be the play there. Get some of that productivity up. Is this invade the USA type alt history wank or an invasion of all South America type history, right? No, this is a Nazis win World War II type alt history wank. It's not really a wank. It's more everything is fucking horrible. At least in Europe. Things are kind of okay in the Americas. I'm still trying to figure out how things are in Mexico. I'm finding I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking. This is staring at the graphs to increase the standard of living wank. Yeah, that's true. That's actually true, Hef. The beauty of having a Twitch chat here with you. Well, the Northeast is actually having their, playing Victoria 2? No. Oh, this may as well be Victoria 2, though. Mixed with, like, a visual novel or some shit. The movement of national liberation was still in its infancy, or that's what its founding members told themselves huddled together in the back rooms of a local bar in Mexico City. The MLN was founded by General Lázaro Cárdenas to continue the monumental task of agrarian reform in Mexico. Now Cárdenas, Gilberto Rincon, and several other men gathered there on that 6-month anniversary of the MLN's founding to discuss the organization's future. If we are to truly make the impact we wish to make on Mexico, we must seriously bolster our membership. Perhaps we could apply to the CNC, Rincon asked. It would give us a far larger platform, and we could even attack the corporate system from within. Absolutely not! If we're to dismantle this rotten system, we cannot also partake in it. He's right, Gilberto. The PRI and its tendrils have already shown that they do not care about fulfilling the revolution's promised land reform. To try and change the system from within will be wasting our time. Instead, we must show the peasants of Mexico that the CNC monopoly over their lives need not continue. We must show them an alternative. You're not seriously proposing that we compete with the CNC, are you? Indeed I am, he said with a smirk. Let's see, productivity is doing well here and here. Oh, God. Andrea leaned towards the radio to fiddle with the volume, making sure that it was just loud enough before making her way back over to the clothesline. As she began to pin up clothes one by one, she could hear the voices in the radio finally speak loud enough for her to hear. His Excellency, the President Lopez Mateos, has just presided to the press an outline of all the goals he aims to achieve over the next 3 years of his government. His government will focus on steady and consistent growth across the whole economy, with particular focus on industrial growth and regions which offer new opportunities for the nation as a whole to share in our connections to the world. He promises continued support of key social services, which will further enhance the safety and security of our nation. The government will introduce new programs to continue its policies to eliminate diseases that ravage our people, including tuberculosis, polio, and malaria. Additional new hospitals will be built in Mexico's rural areas, coupled with further reforms to childcare to help the mothers of our next generation. Illiteracy has dropped markedly since the inauguration of His Excellency, and His Excellency vows to continue the fight to increase the mental fortitude of our youth, with government-issued textbooks to transform the way our children learn. This policy, coupled with land reform, will help lift hundreds of thousands out of poverty and energize our nation to new heights, as promised by His Excellency. Now on to the weather. Andrea began to tune out the radio. She put her focus back on pinning the clothes. Her mind wandered to tonight's dinner, the long list of policies drifting further to the back of her mind. Mexico's prosperity marches on. Next up, we got 2 hour string and 1 month into the game. Must be TNO. True. Yeah, we've been streaming this for about 2 hours. This is the third part of the series as well, so next up we'll be checking out our front bench. Lopez Mateos assembled a glittering array of talent heretofore unseen in the Mexican cabinet, from revolutionary legend Olachea to globe-trotting Baron to Harvard valedictorian Salinas, these secretaries stand at the apex of their fields. But Gustavo Díaz Ordaz, the man that previously stood at their apex, has fallen. The Secretary of the Interior, so forceful and efficient at handling challenges to pre-rule, launched an unwelcome and calamitous foray into international diplomacy. Ordaz will be reminded of his place, and his ambitious peers will make sure he never forgets it again. Reading the leaks, it seems Japan's biggest economic oopsie of the Yasuda crisis has some fun effects on the economy. Oh no, I'm not looking forward to that. I'm really not looking forward to that. Just polish my resume, fun effects, or should I just jump straight into being a cannibal raider? You know, it really depends. It really depends on what you want to do in your future, Washington, I think. Let's check out some of these real quick. Hermosillo. Hermosillo is the capital and largest city of the state of Sonora. Originally 3 separate villages, Hermosillo wasn't declared a city until 1828, named after a general established by decree. During the Mexican Revolution, forces loyal to Pancho Villa were ousted from the city. Following the assassination of Francisco Madero in 1913, Venustiano Carranza began his constitutionalist movement in Hermosillo, which led to the city being dubbed the revolutionary capital of the country. Hermosillo remains economically isolated from the rest of Mexico and the world at large, but its proximity to the Pacific and the American border has led to increasing interest from American and Japanese investors who hopefully bring the city into a modern era. Next up, Ciudad Obregón. Ciudad Obregón, a relatively new city located in the southern reaches of Sonora, was officially established in 1906. Established as part of the Sonoran Railway moving south that connected the U.S. with the rest of Mexico. As the city grew with the years passing by, it was one of the first captured by the revolution by the army of Obregón and Carranza, no less. Its economy boomed with the automobile industry in the 1920s and was renamed to honor General Alvaro Obregón. From what started as being a glorified train stop, it now possesses the title of the second largest city in the state of Sonora. Despite the desert terrain Ciudad Obregón finds itself in, it has continued to grow massively, with its proximity to a valley making it a hub of countless agricultural experiments. With the many experiments occurring, it has been said that a green revolution is happening in the area. Well, look at that. Alright. Let's get going again. Oh, our poverty rate's going down a fair bit again. Look at that. Keep Campbell Ray in my back pocket until smoke starts getting more expensive. There you go. In a nondescript office inside the U.S. Embassy building, Winston Scott stared at a large corkboard. It was covering photos, mostly candid shots taken at a distance, of Japanese agents and their contacts with the Mexican government. Red strings connected them together, revealing the web spun by America's adversaries in its own backyard. The FBI was here to monitor and contain this infiltration, a task it had been entrusted with since the Second World War. Impressive as the image board was, it was not Winston's greatest accomplishment. The FBI bureau chief was far more proud of the intelligence network he'd been able to assemble. A network reaching to the highest levels of Mexican government. His baby, Le Tempo. Over drinks, over envelopes, and occasionally briefcases of pesos, Winston had ascended, step by step, the ranks of Mexico's bureaucracy and security services. When Washington asked a question, he got an answer. When the Mexican government moved, he knew exactly where it was going. When President Nixon wanted Mateos' mediation proposal quashed, Winston fed Ordaz whatever he needed to hear to make that happen. Yet what should have been his crowning achievement was also proven to be a double-edged sword. Lopez Mateos was furious at the FBI for humiliating him on the world stage. Important contacts were certainly reluctant to pass on information, and the mood in the government was growing more hostile to the U.S. Winston's gaze fell upon a specific photo. Major Onodera, the highest-ranking Japanese intelligence officer in the country. Japan's network of informants was small at the moment, yet if given the opportunity, they could spread across Mexico, perhaps even into the United States. The political situation was incredibly volatile, but throwing his weight around would only anger the Mexicans further. All he could do was watch, wait, rebuild his network, and prepare for the battle to come. Interesting indeed. Got our surplus building up, paying off our debt slowly but surely. So far, so good. Sponsor some industry, perhaps. What's the unemployment doing here? It's kind of high in the West. Well, let's sponsor some industry. Try to get that unemployment down a little bit more. What if there's an influence mechanic? I think it looks like there is. What's this? The tourist campaign, there's a 50% chance of spear influence will increase, or 50% American increase will increase. American influence will slightly increase. So it looks like there's a different, there is a mechanic, it just hasn't quite popped up yet. Women in poverty. Yeah, this poverty is brutal. Well, we'll get working on that as we can. How surreal it all was. Dressed in the Sunday best, Enrique, a first-year law student, first-time pan-campaigner, stood amongst fighters for liberty. Stood before his hero, Salvador Rosas Magallon. Enrique had heard him speak before, of course, had greedily sought every speech on freedom, eagerly tracked every tracked, in fact. Say that 5 times fast. Tracked every tract, in fact. Anyway, but how different to be one of the brave few arguing for genuine democracy in Mexico. Pride shivered through Enrique's frame. Smiling, he took his eyes away from Rosas just for a moment to see his fellow's joy and passion for the cause. He did not find it. The 11 campaigners in the room each carried a different expression. A certain grim determination from an elderly man in the corner, a hand-dog look on a scruffy specimen, distaste and anger from a middle-aged woman fingering rosary beads in the back. The last he would have understood if a pre-politician were speaking, but for Rosas? Enrique shrank back a bit. His cohort might not have been what he was expecting, but that didn't change what he needed to do. If anything, he would just have to work harder. To share the pain's cause with more folks and with a broader grin. And so he turned his eyes, his mind farther from the door, farther from the campaigners to the door, where the streets of Ensenada beckoned. The harvest is plentiful, but the workers few. Wonder if there's an influence mechanic where Japan and the U.S. jockey. Oh, I already read that. I think so, yeah. Looks like the quality life. Well, actually, the quality life is pretty bad here, so we can do some, we'll send some aid over there. It's good to see your faces again, Lopez Mateos announced to the members in cabinet. There were moments I wasn't sure if I'd make it out of Tokyo. As you know, my meditation was ultimately successful, despite our Secretary of the Interior nearly ruining everything. Gustavo Diaz Ordaz fought down the urge to wince. The president was mad at him, yes, but his anger would surely pass. The two men had been friends for many years. Ordaz was always a reliable right hand, and Mateos still needed his help. Now, on to business. Ordaz stood up, ready to present first as always did. Secretary Mena, would you lead us off? For a moment, Ordaz froze, surprised evidence on his face, before ignominiously sitting back down. Ordaz Mena struggled not to laugh as he began his report on the economy. After he finished, the president asked another secretary to report, and then another, pointedly skipping Ordaz. A few looked towards Ordaz sympathetically as they stood. Meanwhile, Salinas reveled in humiliation. After every other cabinet secretary had presented, Ordaz rose to give his report on internal security. Your Excellency, Mateos put his hand out. I'm sorry, Secretary Ordaz. That's all the time we have for today. If there's anything urgent in your report, please put in writing and forward it to my office. The higher a man rises, the harder he falls. Pan, try bread with hummus. Philippines will role play in the future of Mexico overcoming campaign. I think so too. I can see it. Okay, let's get working towards stabilizing the playing field. We'll get a little extra liquid reserves. That's probably going to go to pay off our debt, but that's going to be okay, I think. We'll also have our inflation decrease by about 20%. We need pesos for infrastructure, pesos for social support, pesos to keep the governors in line, pesos to ensure that the now rocky succession goes more smoothly than 52. And we know where to get them. We'll check in with Secretary of Hacienda and Public Credit, Antonio Ortiz Mena, to make sure our public finances are in order after this recent crisis. If all goes according to plan, our miracle worker will procure another set of impressive growth figures, low inflation statistics, and favorable prospects for international borrowing. For borrow we shall, to take another step along our steady road towards becoming a developed nation. Mateos when he nukes his second command. Surely this won't hurt Mateos at all. True. Well, he's doing pretty well, it seems. I mean, we're getting a base reduction in poverty because of him. And that's pretty solid. I'm a big fan of that reduction in poverty. I really am. Get a little bit more taxable population because of all that, I believe. There goes a little pets crisis, or a little breakout. The bus from San Diego's trundled to a halt, and its tired occupants began to spill out of the squares. Enrique positioned himself almost directly in front of the doors. Awkward, yes, but that was press of democracy in Baja. So workers attempted to move past, muttering, "Excuse me," Enrique launched in his prepared speech. Wouldn't it be better if you could find good jobs here in Baja? If the priest's so-called union wasn't a joke, maybe you wouldn't have to go to the north for decent pay. Bleary eyes rested on him for a moment, but he could tell most of the captive audience just wanted to go home. Couldn't the prelates fix the potholes on the highway to give you a decent ride? They won't. Not because they don't have the money, but because they're too busy stuffing their pockets to care about hardworking citizens like you. The last line got nods. Enrique even heard a few angry assents. That's why we need change. Fresh faces and a fresh party. The PAN. A new voice for the state. Enrique's voice gave out as he was brushed aside by a sweat-soaked shoulder. The rest of the workers began dispersing, some even filling the buses to leave. One or two told him to keep up the good fight as they passed, but it appeared that liberty was no match for supper and a warm bed. Man does not live by pan alone. Oh, there's the bread bun. The peanuts crunched between the agent's teeth. He paused for a moment to savor of light salt. When on stakeout, he played the long game, made himself comfortable. Much easier in the car than in a ditch or on a concrete floor. He'd done that before, and would gladly do it again if it meant another commie or fascist put away for good. What would it be this week? The agent knew his target was stealing military reports from his day job. That was confirmed. But who was he passing them to? Could be a synarchist enamored of Trujillo, a spy for the gringos, or an opportunist out to grab a briefcase of yen from the Japanese. You meet so many interesting people when working for the Directorate of Federal Security. He swallowed and popped another batch of peanuts into his mouth. It was a good gig, the DFS. Hell, it was the best dig, using every instinct in his muscled body to track a corner and beat the shit out of scum that threatened his country. No one hold him back, no one that he couldn't take down. Amidst the peanuts, his grin looked an awful lot like fangs. An apex predator. There we go. Okay, everywhere's getting slightly comfortable, so that's good. Wouldn't mind getting some productivity up in some of these areas. I would do something in the Yucatan. I think we can up the cash crops over here. Yeah, so I'll expand some cash crops over in Yucatan. Anywhere that does a lot of staple crops. Over here does staple crops. Or more staple crops than anything. Could probably swap things over in Baja, California. Oh, Fidel Castro, look at that. Small form of Secretary of Hacienda and Public Credit, Antonio Ortiz Mena, maneuvered through Chapultepec Park, mind moving as fast as his feet. Financier dismissed the driver waiting at the gate of Los Pinos. His home was close enough, though perhaps this exuberant popcorn vendor would allay him as much as the federal district's notorious traffic. What a meeting. Lopez Mateos had laid out his plan for the final 2 years of his term. Expansion social programs, school construction to complement those textbooks, and a vast infrastructure splurge at with the port of Melchor Ocampo at his centerpiece. All bored, all costly, and even more so if you want to build everything by 1968. Why 68? Finding the pesos to put behind the presidential plan was Mena's job. They could not be printed lest inflation slip its leash or the currency collapse. They could not be taxed without endangering the industrial boom that represented Mexico's future. CNOP wouldn't stand for taxes anyway. Such were the strictures of stabilizing development, the policy, the prison that Mena had built for himself. But stabilizing development was also the solution. The trust he'd won at home and, more importantly, abroad from year after year of growth, fiscal rectitude, currency and price stability were enough to open the wallet of the most tight-fisted banker. And so Mexico would borrow. Borrow to grow to borrow. It all worked perfectly until... Mena strode for a moment through his door, looked in the 18th century French decor for a moment, then darted off to search for his wife, Marta. Asked her to arrange a dinner with the Rockefellers, before heading upstairs to call Secretary of Commerce and Industry Salinas and former President Miguel Alemán. He needed every one of their Japanese contacts. But then he paused and said, "What's so special about 1968? Marta knew immediately. I think Hef knows as well. I know as well immediately. Not immediately, but... Let's see. Let's scout the talent. The PRI has offered the governors of Mexico a bargain. So long as they obey the occasional federal dictate and keep the party's authorities secure and economic growth steady, they are granted immense power and autonomy to oversee their fiefdoms, kings for 6 years at a time. While most of these men reign as petty despots, a few show genuine political promise. We'll seek them out, entrusting them with the infrastructure project that will secure our national prosperity and international prestige. Perhaps they could even be destined for higher office. Perhaps. I think I already read the Sonora ones. Is there anyone that I could read real quick? I'll read Durango real quick. Durango, officially Victoria de Durango, named after the first president of Mexico, Guadalupe Victoria, is the capital of the state of Durango. Founded in 1563 as a town meant for mining silver, the city instead grew around the large iron deposits of Cerro de Mercado. The mining bonanza led to the construction of many colonial-era mansions in the city center. During the War of Independence, many leaders were executed in Durango on July 17, 1812. Durango joined the Mexican Revolution in 1911. The capture and burning by insurgents in 1913 plunged the city into decades-long depression. Recovery has only begun the past decade as droughts and industrial development pushed rural migrants into Durango. Well, there we go. California. Oh. The U.S. Embassy was nice enough, but Winston Scott preferred to get out of the office and see things firsthand. For the FBI bureau chief, taking in the sights and sounds of Mexico City was an essential part of the job, as was getting to know some of the important personalities. Chapultepec Park was a lovely spot for a stroll. The streets provided shade in abundance, and Winston had visited the museums and zoo with his wife and son on occasion. Crowds of people milled about with enough tourists interspersed that the American presence did not draw any particular presence. His eyes came to rest on a young man standing, as expected, along the banks of a lake. The Tempo One did not approach him, instead gazing out over the rowboats of direction of Los Pinos. After a brief scan to Old Winston that neither of them were being watched, the FBI chief took a position at Le Tempo's one side. "Family doing all right?" he asked in fair Spanish. "We've been better. My uncle's in a bit of a bind. That tip you gave him proved to be a load of nonsense. Now that his boss is back in town, he's in a whole heap of trouble." Winston handed over an envelope bulging with pesos, at least 3 times the usual amount. "Tell your uncle to hold tight. We may not see eye to eye on everything, but we always take care of our friends." 2 men, exactly where he wanted them. There we go. We'll go for a few more days, even though my timer just ended, because I did see we have one more focus. Dazzled. The lights of a crystalline chandelier bounce and bend across classical art and ornate furniture lining the Acapulco Hilton suite. The drooping eyes of a secretary of Hacienda and Public Credit, Antonio Ortiz Medina, they seem to illuminate and refract off the countless invisible filaments linking the room. No, this man to the Mexican miracle. The thread, the bonds between UNAM graduates, the generals lowering their guns to pick up a cigar, the Irashamites and welcomes that rolled off unfamiliar tongues, the promises of low taxes and low wages kept, those of Article 123 forgotten, the bodies, some porcine, some toned for the screen, all rich, lounging in the sands below. The analyst pitches to invest in factories, invest in bonds, to invest in the government that will invest in the roads, the railroads, the power lines, so you can invest more in factories, the oil. The spinning chandelier and its glittering web, suspending a nation over the abject ruination and poverty from which it sprang. This man poised at its center, his mustache bristling like the hairs of a hunting spider. Former President Miguel Alemán stopped pouring wine. "Perhaps I should cut you off, Antonio. Raul and I are quite convinced about Mateo's spending plans as you relayed them over the phone." Secretary of Commerce and Industry Raul Salinas Lozano nodded, taking another puff off his cigar. "That was not my intention. We have adequate fiscal space for His Excellency's social spending priorities, which will have a benefit side effect of relieving wage pressures. The infrastructure expansion will lower shipping costs, providing both demand and supply side support for our manufacturers while keeping inflation in line." Mena took a sip from his half-full wine glass, watching the frowns fade from colleagues' faces. "And given your role on the Commission for National Tourism, if I understand the President's intentions, a golden opportunity is coming." You know what else is coming? The end of this video. I'm going to have to end things there. But thanks always for watching, gang. Like if you liked, dislike if you didn't, leave in comments feedback down in the comment section below. I read all the comments I get, and I do appreciate any feedback you have for me. Check out my various links down in the description box below. And yeah, hit the sub button, notification bell. Check out the links down in the description box below. I think that's going to be it for now, my friends. I thank you all for watching. My name has been Mr. Dogboat333. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye now.